In today's video, we are going to be talking about how you can make six figures as a website designer. If you're new here, my name is Rebecca from Rebecca Grace Designs, and I help you build beautiful websites in Squarespace. I'm so excited because today we're going to be joined by the one and only Paige Brunton, the creator of Score Secrets and Score Secrets Business, and she has helped a ton of people launch successful Squarespace website design businesses. So I'm very, very excited to have her here today and pick her brain on how you can make six figures as a website designer. Let's jump in. Welcome, Paige, and thank you so much for joining me today. I'm very excited to have you on our channel and talking about all things Squarespace design and making six figures and how is that possible? What happens? How do we do that? And I'm very excited to have you here to hear all about your expertise.
Good. Thank you, Rebecca. I'm so stoked to be here.
Yeah. So I guess the biggest question that people have when it comes to wanting to make six figures is, I guess, like, how do I get there? What's the difference between somebody who's charging, a lower end or average for a website design and somebody who's making six figures and charging enough to make six figures? What's the main difference between those two people?
Such a good question, starting right off the bat. Okay, so I have noticed a lot of things. My husband and I take walks frequently, and this is something that we were discussing. So I've helped like thousands of people now to become website designers. And we were looking at every single time we would do like a new group of students, some of them would come in and just immediately start killing it. And we're like, what is consistent with all of these people who are just like busting out the gate and just getting a ton of bookings, booking out months in advance, getting really high priced projects? Like, what do they all have in common? So I could try to like relay that to like other people basically. And so we found a few things. They typically had one of two things happen. Either they had really incredible design skills. Now, this did not always start off that way. So like they often built up over time to get these really great design skills, or maybe they had a background. Some of them had a little bit of an advantage because they had already done some design work in like a past job, or maybe they had a graphic design degree, not all by any means. But people who are doing really well, who are making six figures, often have incredible design or a really solid niche. Tends to be like one of the two. So that was something which is like, either they're getting projects because people look at their work and they're like, it is the most unbelievable, beautiful thing in the world, or this really identifies with my personal design style, or alternatively, they had some sort of like very specific slice of the market that they were trying to talk to, as opposed to trying to talk to everyone. And that's something which I personally, like, it took me a really long time. Like, I was so against the whole like niching thing and everything, and I just like didn't know what to pick, and it was so painful. And I want people to know, like, you don't need to start with a niche. You don't need to start with incredible design skills. If you saw my work at the beginning, believe me, you would not be like, that's incredible design. And like, it takes time and everything. But those are the two things which I notice tends to be very consistent with people who are surpassing the six-figure mark every year. Like, they have nailed one of those two things over time. The other thing which I noticed, and this was interesting, I remember I was on a Q&A call with a bunch of students once, and there was a girl who was in the, like, asking the question or whatever. She's like, okay, bought the course, and I just finished university last week. I'm not going to apply for any jobs. I'm just going to do this. And I was like, okay, like, some people have like a sink or swim mentality. For me, I was like, that sounds so unbelievably stressful to me. Like, I would not, and it a little bit stressed me out when she told me that. I was like, okay, wow. But anyways, I did find that like something consistent with the ones who are doing really, really well. They didn't all do to that extent by any means, but at some point they decided. Sometimes it was right when they started. Sometimes it was a little bit in, but they're like, I am going to figure this out. Like, I am going to be successful with this. I am not going to, I don't know, have 27 backup plans. Like, I'm just going to keep at this until I get there. And that was also really consistent with the ones who are doing exceptionally well. So yes. And then the other thing I would say is marketing strategy. Like, they have all the difference between someone who's stuck on Fiverr making $500 a project versus someone who's making 15 grand a project is they have picked a marketing strategy and they're actually implementing it, and like, they're not relying on Upwork or Fiverr or any of those sort of platforms, or Etsy. I started on Etsy. They're not relying on those platforms to get their clients. They're really doing a marketing strategy which gets their clients to come to them. And that's also really key too.
And I think it's important that that marketing strategy has to be like authentic to you as well. I remember when I first started out and like I was trying blogging and social media and all of those things, but a lot of those are like long-term strategies. And so I was really slow to start out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, I want a short-term strategy. And what had kind of come up was somebody was doing a course on cold pitching. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. Well, that's not me. I am not, I am not a cold pitcher. I am not somebody that um, can do that. I just don't, it doesn't feel authentic to me. And so I think it didn't come
Mm-hmm.
across because they knew I was almost like, sorry to bother you, but can I have a moment of your time? Like, it just wasn't me. Yeah, excuse me.
Excuse me.
So
Yep.
it just didn't work. And and then I'm thinking like I'm doing something wrong, but it just wasn't me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I ditched that real quick. And so I think yeah, having a marketing strategy that like works but is part of you and is something that you're going to feel
Mm-hmm.
comfortable putting the time and effort in, because it does take a huge amount of time. And if you're not into it and it's
Totally.
not for you, then that's just going to make your life horrible. It's going to not be
Yep.
enjoyable. Yeah, for sure.
Honestly, it's so true. And I actually remember I had the same like lesson that you had there. And it was because I had always struggled to get myself to go to the gym. And I was like, I just don't want to do it. Like, I just hate going to the gym. Like, no part of me enjoys that. And so I was listening to a fitness podcast once, and the guy was like, stop trying to force yourself to do exercise that you hate. And I was like, huh, oh, that's a good
Oh.
point. He's like, anything that is moving your body counts as exercise. So just go, if you like going for a hike, then go for a hike. Like, stop trying to get yourself to like pump a barbell in the gym. And I was like, oh, good point. And I definitely had that experience when it came to business. Was I was like, I do not like I'm just personally not somebody who wants to post my life on Instagram every day. I don't want to show up on any social media every day. That's not for me. I want to create content, and then I want to schedule it to go out when I want it to, because that just works better for me. And so same thing in the business is like I tried to force myself into doing things I didn't want to do, and that didn't go so well.
Because you think
And
you're
then when I
supposed
just
to
same
or
thing,
you
like picked a
should.
marketing strategy.
Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. All the shoulds, like
Hmm.
that doesn't work. So yeah. So even if, as I talk about like a really solid niche, don't should yourself into a niche. If you're like, no, I'm not finding anything that I want to niche into, that's fine. You can still be successful without a niche. Again, as I said, the people who I like, the students who I'm noticing are like smashing six figures every year. They have one of the two things. They're like, either they really worked on their design skills, or they really worked on niche, or they really worked on unbelievable like getting so good at a marketing strategy that just like they were so in demand that they can,
Hmm.
like, when you are in demand, when you are getting way more inquiries than you have space, that's what enables you to like up the price. So when I started with, well, I started with a few things, but eventually like got rid of all the other ones I didn't like, and eventually was just like, I like blogging, like I love writing blog posts, and that was really easy to me. And then literally got to the point where like I was getting an inquiry a day from like people going from Google to my blog and then
Wow.
inquiring through my website. And I'm one human. I do not have time for 365 web design projects in a year.
Yeah.
And so it's like when you get to the point where you just have so many inquiries, suddenly your price can go way higher.
Hmm.
And so that's supply and demand, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of charging, a couple kind of caveats here. How much can you charge? Like, how much are people charging? Like, so how, in other words, how do I know how much I can charge? How do I price that?
Mm-hmm.
That's such a difficult thing that people deal with when when they're starting out or when they're starting to get too many inquiries and they want to price up. Like, how do I know what to charge?
Totally. Okay, so let's start with like kind of like normal-ish pricing, higher end pricing, just to like give some like ballpark ideas. So I would say when you are like, let's start with starting. If you're starting off as a website designer, all of my students, because I'm like, okay, you invested in yourself, you took a course, you know what you're doing when it comes to building websites and everything. Like, I don't want to see you charging $100 or like a few hundred or even $1,000. Like, let's go like 2,500, 3,000 would be like a good like starting thing. If you want to do a project or two for free to build a portfolio, okay, no problem. But like from there, you shouldn't be charging $1,000. Like this should be into the thousands. For like the skill and expertise and level of quality of websites that you'd be building after you like actually know what you're doing. Then I would say getting into like more like normal mid-tier pricing, we would be talking like 4, 5, 6 grand is probably like normal. So we're talking about like Squarespace website, 5, 6, 7 pages or so, just the website, no branding, no e-commerce, none of those other things. Like that's not copywriting or whatever. That's what I'm talking about as I'm giving these prices. And then we start getting into higher price projects. So we're talking like 8 to 15,000. And by the way, it's all US dollars. So like 8 to 15,000 is what I'm noticing for students who are like really doing well, really, you know, nailing marketing strategies, creating incredible work for their clients, those sorts of things. Something really interesting, which one of my past students did, and she's definitely on like the higher end of pricing. I think her pricing might be around like 15 grand right now per project. She actually built someone, not just like a website, but kind of like an entire business. So she created what she calls the City Living Network. You can Google it, citylivingnetwork.com. And so what she does is she builds people like a location specific blog, and then she educates them on like, okay, here's the blog. So it's like, this is like the Orange County location blog. Basically, she like writes them a few blog posts, she gets the website set up, she educates them on like how to work with local businesses and how to like write content that ranks in Google and stuff. And so it's kind of like a bigger than just a website package. But
almost like a business
she can charge it's like
in it as
yeah,
well.
it's like a little business in a box with some coaching and the website sort of, and some like,
Nice.
I think matching social media graphics and stuff. And she puts that all together, and I'd have to go check the website to know exactly what their most recent is. I think last time I was talking to her, it was about like 15 grand for that sort of project. So you can, of course, like those are, again, the price that we discussed before now, we're just like website things. But of course, you can always up those prices if you want to add on copywriting, or you want to add on brand design, or if you're doing any sort of like e-commerce through the website, any integrations. I know people setting up courses is like a really huge thing that website designers are all often being asked to do now. So those things can all obviously bring the project up like to a much higher rate as
you're
well.
setting up any sort of back end stuff with, you know, the top page or anything like that.
Yeah. So I'd say realistically, you're ranging from like, in terms of like experience, skill, in-demandness, whatever, from starting at maybe like 3 grand all the way up to like 15 grand for like website projects. And again, it could go higher than that if you're adding on some other things too.
Oh, okay, cool. And so you had mentioned about if you're starting out, possibly doing some for free. Do I need to do that? Do I have to have a portfolio? Like how does that work if I'm starting out and I want to build that portfolio? Do I have to do some for free first?
Great question. So you can or you cannot. Either one is fine. Either one works. I think the way that I advise it is it really depends on like your comfort level. So for example, when I started, I was still in university. So I was still like doing a full-time degree, I had a part-time job, and then I was also like building someone a website on top of it. And so I was like, okay, I don't know if I can promise like finishing it within this timeline, which I want to do. I want to do websites in 2 weeks. But I wasn't 100% sure. And it was like someone who I knew who I was going to build this website for. It was a nonprofit. So I was like, cool, it's a nonprofit. I want to like just kind of test this out. I kind of know them. I was like, hey, I want to treat this like a real client project, like with like deadlines and all these things. But I want to do it for you for free because I'm testing this process, just want to see if it works. So like my hope is that you give me a testimonial and that you're going to be flexible with me if it does take longer. But my real hope is that we do this like in a really professional sense and that I can just like test if this works. And so for me, doing the very first one for free felt really good because it was like, just helped me know that I could do it, and it just made my stress level like so much lower. But all the ones after that I did them all paid after that. I was like, cool, I just needed one to test I could do it, and then I was good to go. If you want to do 2 or 3 for free, great, but like I wouldn't go beyond that. Like we don't need to do 15 projects for free in order to, get started. And granted, on the other hand, if you feel comfortable charging, this is also the thing though, I wouldn't even, and when it comes to charging like a few $100s, I wouldn't even do it because it's just like, it's such a small amount of money that people don't even really like respect the project necessarily. So you could even go for like $1,000 or something for like the first website that you're doing. So like paid or whatever. Definitely when I see people charging like $200 because I just want to test it, I'm like, the point it like could be free or it could be $1,000. Like, I don't know. You do you. But I would say that I have seen sometimes people, it's like, such a minimal amount of money that I'm just like, it doesn't even really, I don't know. I don't think it works that well. But anyways.
I think kind of like what you're saying, like I didn't have a good experience with offering for free. I tried to offer for my first one too. I wanted to test the process. I was really nervous. I was like, okay, this will be low risk. And I mean, maybe I didn't communicate the expectations very clearly. I find that that can make a huge difference in a project as well. But it just did not go well because they just, yeah, they didn't take it seriously. And like same as when you have free or lower cost, like you're attracting a certain type of client, and it tends to be somebody who wants the world for a very small price, and they end up in my experience, it's been the worst clients that I have worked with. And so it didn't really help me test my process or my project because it was just such a headache. You know?
The person's just so difficult to work with. Yeah, it's totally true. I think actually one of the reasons that I maybe didn't have that problem was because when we started discussing it, we weren't discussing doing it for free. We were just discussing their need for a website and everything. And then I really thought it through, and it was like, okay, I'll see, like maybe I'll work with you on this project. Let me give me some time to think about if I really have time to fit this in with all the other stuff I'm doing right now. And so we had kind of spoken about working together before we even talked about the price. And then I was like, okay, cool. I want to do this for free, just to whatever, but I want to do it in this really professional way and everything. So I feel like maybe there was a little bit of it wasn't, for example, if someone, I've seen people do that, is they post in Facebook groups hey, want to do a free web design project? Do you want a free website? And I think maybe starting off with that is maybe getting those people who are literally going to make your life harder, and therefore going to maybe knock your confidence that you could do it correctly, because they're really difficult to work with. So it's really difficult to wrap the project up on time. So I agree that the way you go into it is good, but I totally think it's also fully valid for you to charge for the first project. If you want to charge for the first project, if you have the confidence to do that, I think that's also a great way to go. So it's not like you have to do one way or the other. The other option is you can make concept projects for your first projects to go into your portfolio, which doesn't even involve another human anyways. So
yeah. I never linked live websites in my portfolio, even if they were for a client or whatever, because I handed over all my projects and they could change them. And so I never had live links, so they wouldn't know whether it was a real person or not. So there's a good tip for you too, if you're not wanting to maybe do it for free for a person or test out the client process. You could build it with just concepts and Great, awesome. So how long does the cost kind of depend on the length? You talked about the number of pages, and I know a lot of people are doing the VIP days now, or the website in a day. Is that something that I have to do? And if I do I charge less? How does the length of a project contribute to the cost?
Okay, length of the project, or size of the website, I guess?
Yeah.
Yep. So it does play a factor. Let's say that your projects start at, it's $7,500 is your sort of starting rate or whatever. And maybe that's including 6 pages or 7 pages on the website. If it's more pages, then definitely, okay, we're adding on a couple $100 for these extra pages and everything. But I think no matter what, you do have this sort of starting out rate, because if you think about, okay, I have so many weeks in a year that I can build websites in. And if each project takes me a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever you decide you want your timeline to be, okay, I have this many spaces. Let's say you have 20 spaces to build websites in the year and you want to make 6 figures. Well, you've got to then work backwards. So if someone's oh, I just want a 1-page project or something, but you're oh, well, actually that doesn't really, you need to decide, do I even want to take on that project? Because maybe I can't be charging $7,500 for a 1-page website. And so therefore I would rather do a full website build, if that makes sense. It's also the time to onboard a client, offboard a client, manage the project, do the consultation call, get their homework together, communicate with them. All of those things take time. So you do also need to set your sort of minimum, if that makes sense. So the size of the website does impact, but I would also say we want to start with your sort of, you've figured out how much you want to make in a year, how many project spaces do you have, therefore how much does each project need to cost, is that at all in line with what's happening in the industry? So let's say $7,500. And then, yes, it could be, if they want to add on another 3 pages, maybe it's an extra $1,000 on top of that or so. So it does affect it. But I would still, at the same time, if someone really wants just 1-page websites, then maybe, you need a different model. You need a VIP day model or something, so that it's you're not taking one of your 2-week periods to do some really small project, which then isn't even hitting your like 7,500 minimum, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like how you talked about going backwards, because I think a lot of times people are still thinking in the hourly, like, oh, I want to charge this much per hour. And then they're trying to figure out how many hours this web design takes. And I think it's a hard way of trying to scope out a project. So I like how you said, okay, the average website, 5-page website is going to take me 2 weeks from start to finish. So I have this many 2-week periods in a year. How much do I want to charge, and kind of work backwards? I think that's important for people to kind of make that shift from an hourly to a value of a project.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And I think that could be difficult for people if you come from the VA world, if you come from, I don't know, some other world, like hourly is the way that things work and everything. But really, when it comes to website design, it's not so much about your hours. Because say you've been at website design, like a friend asked me, she's starting a catering company. And she was like, hey, can you help me build a website? And I was like, yeah, sure. So just on a Sunday, like I literally knocked out an entire website for her. I didn't charge her anything. She's one of my best friends. So I just did it like as a favor, basically. I could build her an entire incredible website in like 6 hours on a Sunday. Would it make sense if I was like, oh, well, hourly rate, whatever? Like, no, it doesn't really make sense, because it took me so long to get to the point where I could knock out like an incredible website in 6 hours, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
your hour, how much time it takes me.
Exactly. Your hour is different than a beginner's hour or somebody else's hour. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the thing as well, is like, if when you're a beginner, you're like, oh, I feel bad because I'm charging hourly, but this is taking me like 7 hours because I just like didn't know how to do this thing. So I had to like spend 7 hours researching something on Google or YouTubing or whatever. And then you feel bad to charge your client for all that time because you just didn't know how to do the thing. But then it's the same once you get really good, it also doesn't really make sense in the other way. So again, it's more based off of like, okay, what is the value to the end client?
Yeah.
What is this website worth to them? That is how this, and also, again, how much you do need to be making in a year and everything. So you kind of set your minimums of like, okay, I'm not going to give away a 2-week period for less than this amount of money, basically. So, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. And then thinking of like, scheduling out your year, you're saying I have this many 2-week design periods across the year. I think something we all kind of struggle with, or a myth that I thought is, if I want to make more money, if I want to make 6 figures, well, right now I'm making, $50,000 and I'm working 40 hours a week. Does that mean to make 100,000 or 6 figures, I need to be working 80 hours a week? Like, do they just work more? And so like, do you have to work all of the time in order to make 6 figures, in order to make more in your business? Do you get vacation? Like, is your life work, or do you, can you have a work-life balance at all if I want to make 6 figures?
Totally. Such a valid question. And I've definitely thought about that as I've gone to grow my business. Sometimes there was a few times where I like stopped and I was like, wait, do I really want that? Let me actually tell you a story quickly, because it's kind of funny. So in my mastermind, the lady who runs the mastermind sent an email to all of us to update us on some trip that we're going on together. And we also have a WhatsApp group. She got 18 auto responses back. And they were all like, basically along the lines of like, I'm enjoying my summer vacation, living my life, doing my thing. Like, my team is there to support you, or like, there's like the resources in the FAQ section, or like, I'll be back in September and whatever. And so she was just kind of joking. She's like, I can see y'all are off living your best life and no one's actually working right now. And these are women doing like incredible businesses. So no, you do not need to work constantly in order to run a larger business. I think, let me say the key difference, I think, between people who run these larger businesses who make more money and the people who are running the smaller businesses and are in the beginner stages. It's choosing what you spend your time on. And I think that when I started my business, and when I see a lot of other people starting a business, they're coming back to the shoulds. I should do Instagram. I should do Pinterest. I should do this. I should do that, whatever. Now, when you get like, and I should offer these 77 different types of services to my clients, and I should do anything that they ever ask me. The longer you're in business, the more you realize like, okay, I'm going to offer one thing or like 2 packages, and I'm going to have like 1 marketing strategy or 2 marketing strategies, and I'm going to get like so exceptionally good at this or so exceptionally well known for this that people just like come to me for this thing. And so I think it's really about like the decisions that you make. And so trying to figure out if you start off doing all the things, like it's really worth evaluating after, let's say, year one of your business. Look back at where were you spending your time and what brought in money into your business, and are things correlating or not correlating, and what can you just stop doing? So for me, I started off doing like a bajillion marketing strategies, and then I realized, I was like, okay, so let me look back at every client which inquired this year. Where did they come from? And I'm like, the blog. And I had like one from Pinterest or something. And I was like, okay, screw Pinterest, screw Instagram, screw all of these other things. I'm just going to do this thing, which is like clearly already working. And yeah, when it came to like different services, I used to offer like a few different things. And then I realized, you know what, the thing that's like, that gets me the biggest bang for my buck, like in terms of, if I did like website audits, for example, they cost me like $200, or they cost $200 for someone to buy. Between the onboarding, the communication, the like doing the call and organizing my life around the fact that I had this call to do when I normally don't have calls and everything, I realized like, you know what, actually I like the amount of time that this is taking versus how much it's making versus if I just do one more like website design project, is like, I should just get rid of that service basically. So it's really about evaluating like, what are you doing? And again, how is your time and where you're making money? Where is that aligning and not aligning? Or also just outsourcing things. So when it comes to outsourcing, it's about outsourcing the lowest dollar per hour thing. So say, for example, sometimes website designers would be like, oh, I'm like maxed out on like work, so therefore I need to hire another website designer in order to, you know, bring in more money in the business. But a website designer costs them a fair amount because that's a like more highly skilled thing to do. Versus if you're still doing your own bookkeeping, or you're doing your customer service, or you're doing, I don't know, some sort of like admin nonsense, or clearing the recordings out of your Zoom or something. It's like, okay, wait, maybe I don't need to hire another website designer, but I need to spend my time on higher dollar per hour tasks versus these lower dollar per hour tasks. Maybe it's getting stuff out of your plate that doesn't need to be there. So you can, again, focus your efforts on these like more money generating things. And yes, then you have slightly higher, like you're spending money on paying a person to do this thing, but it could cost you $20 an hour as opposed to $100 an hour, if that makes sense. So it's really about making decisions differently as opposed to work more hours. You do not need to work more hours. I think you just need to get a little bit more strategic about how you're spending your time.
Yeah, I think when to hire and how to hire is a difficult decision to make in your business. But I like how you talked about efficiency. And the other thing that you kind of hinted at, but is something that I really learned, was making data-driven decisions in your business. And I think when you're first starting out, you're like, oh wait, I'm the business owner. I have to make all the hard decisions. And a lot of times we don't necessarily have somebody we can like bounce ideas off of, or we don't really know who to turn to be like, okay, do I spend money on this thing or this thing? And, you know, to hire a business coach or, you know, something like that is so expensive. It's often out of reach at the beginning. And I was like, well, how do I know what decision to make? How do I know what to do? And I think that the data-driven decision is so important. Recording, and keeping track of, you know, how long is this taking me, and how much money am I spending on this, and where's the money coming in to the business, and recording all of that. So later on you can make decisions based on facts and not just based on how you're feeling about something or your emotions, right? To remove that emotional piece out of it and go based on analytics. Yeah.
I should also mention that sometimes when I think about efficiency, it's actually not hiring a person. It's sometimes like, for example, I didn't use a CRM system in my business at the beginning. And so signing contracts and following up on payments and all these different things, managing a project was so much work. And then I got a CRM system. I got Honeybook personally. And then I was like, oh my God, the amount of time that saved me. It's like, okay, cool. Like that, I didn't even need to hire a person. I just needed to like set up a system and a software, which yes, it did cost me money and everything, but like the amount of time that it saved me was definitely worth it. So it's like, is there things that you're doing in your business that could be done faster if you had some sort of a software to help you with it? And in which case, like that would be a really great first investment, for example. And then to your point about like, sometimes you feel alone and you don't even know like what decision you should be making. Trying to, and yes, sometimes business coaches can be very expensive. Sometimes you can get inside of communities where there's people who are like really experienced. Like I look at our student community, and because the course has been going for so long, there's people who are like, they've been running a web design business for 5 years. and someone asks a question who like started this year, or when I do like monthly Q&A calls with the students, it's like they can still get that sort of like an answer and sort of get that advice from someone who's been in it a bit longer, who knows how to make these decisions maybe in a different way than everyone who's just like the blind leading the blind, all like first year people.
Yeah, I know it can be very difficult, I think, in communities. You get sometimes so many different opinions thrown at you that it can be hard. But if you're in a community like you're saying, where they're a specific community, so I think it's important to also be careful with who you're surrounding yourself with, and be cautious of what communities you're joining, and pay attention to who's in that community and who's giving that advice, and that they are specific to Squarespace or Squarespace design, or something that can be really important to you, to make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people, so that you're not getting a million opinions and you're not really sure where they're coming from or who they're coming from.
Exactly. Yeah. Coming back to the blind leading the blind, you need to figure out, like, is the person who's answering this question, do they actually know what they're talking about? Because if like, then like, maybe not. Whereas if they're like, oh, I've been at this for a while and like I'm running a super successful business, so like, okay, well, that's like, be conscious of where the advice is coming from, for sure.
Yeah. And so I know you mentioned your past students and you have a community, and just sort of, I think one thing that I guess when I played devil's advocate as I'm watching these videos and they're saying, oh, it's totally possible to make 6 figures. And you're like, okay, cool. But like, how common is that? Like, is this like a goal that's like an attainable, or is this like a dream that like some people accomplish? Like, is this actually something that I personally can do? Like, how common is it among your students? Do you have lots of students that have done this, or is it kind of like, the special few?
Yeah, nope. Plenty of them who have done it. So in the web designer industry, I think when I look at people who do these different online jobs, virtual assistants, brand designers, copywriters, these sorts of things, these are typically not as well paid as something in the web design industry. So making 6 figures in the web design industry, if you think about if your average project is, I don't know, $7,500 per project, and you can knock those out in a week or 2 weeks, it becomes pretty easy to achieve that 6-figure mark. I feel like this is lucky and maybe unusual in the web design industry, because it is on average a lot more well paid than the average like online job that's out there. I actually did do a video which compared like all the different online jobs and like what they were typically paid and everything. And website designer definitely came out at the top in with Facebook Ads Manager as well. So those are really like the 2 highest paid online jobs you can get these days. And so again, when you just think about, okay, how many projects could I do in the year? What is the average price of those projects? Again, knowing the fact that people start out at like $3,000 maybe per project, but then it's going up to like 15,000. Doesn't take that many $15,000 projects to get to 6 figures in a year. So it's definitely very possible within this industry. I feel like a lot of people who are struggling, and again, a lot of virtual assistants, and they're like, okay, I'm charging like $20, $30, $40 an hour or something. Like, how am I ever going to get to 6 figures? And it's true that math, like coming back to your question about like, do I just have to work an insane number of hours? If you're staying in something like that, then yes, it would take an insane number of hours. So you've really got to start figuring out what's like a higher value skill that I could offer that has a more valuable end result to a business owner, and that's kind of the key to getting there.
And I think too, that's just counting web design. Most people, most designers that are making 6 figures, that's not their only source of income in their business. And so I think it's also important to think about the other sources of income. I think I read an article, I wish I could find it, that talked about like the average 7-figure business owner or something had like 7 streams of income or something. I can't remember, but it was like, it talked about the number of streams. So there's like, becoming affiliates for, HoneyBook. Like I'm an affiliate for HoneyBook and the Creative Law Shop, and you're an affiliate for these different places. And I think that helps bring in money. You get revenue maybe from YouTube or from different platforms. And so I think it's important to also diversify your business in the way of the ways that you are bringing in income, without adding to your hourly. Like for me, YouTube just made sense because I was posting my tutorials on YouTube, and then as a way to put them on my blog. It wasn't even to build a YouTube following at first. It was just, at the time Squarespace didn't have the video upload feature, so it was YouTube or Vimeo. So I was like, I'll put them on YouTube and then I'll post them on my blog. And then it was like, well, I'm already doing this, so why don't I spend a little bit of time learning how to in build up subscribers and maybe become monetized on YouTube. And so it doesn't take any extra work from me. And yet now I have another stream of revenue in my business. And so I think that's important too, when you're thinking about getting to six figures, is adding in other streams of income that don't add to your time.
Yes, that's so true. Honestly, that's one of the reasons I love YouTube and love having a channel, is because, when I turned on monetization, like I just never turned it on for the longest time, because same thing, I was the same as you. It was like, it's just a video which goes in the blog and like whatever. I never even thought about it. At some point I got an email being like, you can turn on monetization, or reminder you haven't. And so I was just at some point like, okay, I'll just take it on, see what happens. It's like $1,000 a month from Squarespace tutorials I had made like 5 years ago. And I was like, oh my God, like what? So I don't know, certain things on YouTube just are exceptionally highly paid, and website design tutorials are one of them. So
Yeah. Amazing. So last question I have for you. You've been mentioning your course, and you've been mentioning some other things. Do I need training or some sort of certification then to charge, the $5,000 to $7,000? Do I need some sort of training for that?
That's such a good question. So it is not mandatory, but it helps you get there a lot faster. So, and I should clarify, there is no certain certification that is needed to be a website designer these days. That is not a thing. Of course, you need to genuinely know how to build great websites to serve clients well, and for anyone to actually take you seriously and want to book with you and everything. So it's a real thing that you do need, is like the skill of doing the job. Certain certification, certain degree, not a thing. My brothers both studied computer science in university. They are like, they're doing things like building website design platforms like Squarespace. They are not actually like building websites for small businesses. So like, don't think that you need to go to get a computer science degree in order to be a website designer, because it's actually not even going to lead you to sort of the job that we're talking about right now, like building websites for small businesses. But I can definitely say that we have actually done a study. I will try to find the graphic. We put it above here. But yes, if you take some courses, we have definitely found that you are able, between a mix of confidence and better skills, charge significantly more for your web design projects. And so it definitely helps you to, be earning a little bit better. I can say, however, you don't even need to start with taking a paid course if you don't want to. I do actually have something, it's called the Profitable and Productive Web Designer Bootcamp. It's actually coming up live October 16th, 17th, and 18th. And it is a little community if you want to make some good web designer friends, people who are interested in the same thing. We're talking all about finding clients, managing your projects, sort of like the introduction to what it means to be a website designer. Again, what is normal pricing? What are the different like revenue generation options you have as a website designer? And we also have some really fun giveaways happening there as well to really get you started as a website designer. So that's something free which you can get started with. We will put the link for where you can register for that down below. Again, it is live, so if you're watching this before October 16th, 17th, 18th, register stat. If not, it's passed for this time, but I do run them every like 6 months to a year or so. So yeah, that's a really good place to get started, and that is totally free.
Yeah, and I love that you're still running this. That's how I got started, and that's how I kind of came across Squarespace. I hadn't heard of Squarespace really before, but I knew I wanted to get into web design, and I saw that you were hosting a free boot camp, and so I joined and got me hooked. And that's how I actually got started with that as well. So I love that you are running it again, because it's definitely was an amazing experience for sure.
It's always so nice to get to hang out with past students as well. I don't know if we mentioned at any point, but Rebecca actually took the courses. So.
Yeah, that's how I did the Profitable boot camp, and then I decided to purchase Square Secrets and Square Secrets Business from you, and then I jumped into Squarespace, and the rest is history. Here we are. So yeah, amazing, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all of your expertise. I hope that has been helpful for people in encouraging them that it is 100% possible for them, and that it's not as mystical, I think, as some people think. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So nice to be here. Oh, and I hope to see all of you at bootcamp soon. So go register. Click the link below.